Hello and welcome to today's episode of Courage Permission Slip. I am your host, Kia, and today I am so excited and pleased to welcome my friend, Robin L. Owens, Ph.D., and I would love to share a little bit about her impressive background with you. Robin is the host of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast and author of the upcoming book, Purpose-Based Decisions, an inspirational guide to more meaning, purpose, and passion in your business or career. Dr. Robin inspires, teaches, empowers, and mentors high-achieving women leaders to discover and use their leadership purpose so they can make a meaningful difference through their business or career. And she has over 20 years of experience in researching, teaching, and studying meaning and purpose in the lives and work of women leaders. Robin, welcome.
Thank you, Kia. It's so good to be here and to spend this time with you. And I'm glad all the people who are watching and listening are here listening into this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm very excited too. And, before because it's like every time, I knew about you, but every time I, get everyone's bio together and what I'm going to say, sometimes I'm like, woo, wow, like that's amazing. And so, when I look at how much time you have spent researching and studying these topics of meaning and purpose, and in particular in women leaders, and I'm curious to hear from you, how did you decide to get on that path? Like, what drew you in?
Okay. Well, it starts, I almost want to say, long, long ago in a time far, far away, in a place far, far away. I kind of want to start it that way. But it does start when I was in my early childhood. And I'll say more about that in a second. But,
Mhm.
I hope this encouraged someone as they're thinking about their own work, think about the way it connects to their early childhood. Okay.
Mm.
So here is when it started so long ago, when I was at least my earliest remembrance. I was about 6 years old. I grew up in Connecticut, and I always say I'm from the great state of Connecticut as a way to give honor to all my loved ones who are still there, my family and friends. Anyway, so about six years old, growing up in Connecticut, I grew up in a three-family house, and the houses were built where there are individual apartments, different families. My parents owned the house, and so we had family in the second and third floors. We were on the first floor, but we all would go in and out of each other's apartments like it was one big house.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I remember it almost like it was yesterday. I mean, when I was 6, it was a really long time ago. But I was sitting we had a big front porch in the front of the house. And I was sitting on the porch and one summer morning, school was out, and I can hear my sister, and I have about 7 or 8 cousins were the ones that all lived together.
Mhm.
And they were inside, and I heard them talking with my father, and they were laughing and playing. And then they're on their way out to the porch. And I heard my father say to them, "Don't go out there and bother Robin. She's out there contemplating the meaning of life." And he laughed. He thought this was so funny, right? This was funny to him. But to me, I was embarrassed. I remember
Mm.
that moment because I was embarrassed by that. And fast forward now as an adult, looking back, he was right.
Mm.
It
Mm.
wasn't so much that I was asking that particular question that I'm aware of, what's the meaning of life? But I needed time to get away. I was on the porch away from the kids,
Mhm.
get away by myself to reflect on the bigger questions of life.
Mm.
And so that is when it started. From my
Mm.
earliest remembrance of when it started, this idea of thinking about meaning. And somehow my father knew.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's fascinating. And I'm curious, and we could talk about this a little bit, but did you, knowing that was your earliest remembrance, did you have a lot of zigzags, but was there a little piece, a little voice that always kept you coming back to that?
Yes, you are reading my mind, Kia.
Imagine that.
I imagine many of us have those stories, right? Where it zigs and zags. And I
Hmm.
mean, it's a lot of years to even pick up. But
Yeah.
the overall theme, if I look back, that idea of reflection,
Hmm.
big questions, and meaning were always there for me.
Mm-hmm.
As I grew, I always took time away to think about that. And then as years went on, I decided to go back to school in my second career, third career, somewhere in there, went back to pursue a PhD to then study and research to answer those big questions of life.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Fascinating, fascinating. Well, I'm sure that these themes are going to come up throughout because you and I both know, and any of the listeners and viewers who have followed me for any period of time, you know that I center a lot of what I talk about in that personal reflection, taking that pause to take a step back before you move forward.
Yes.
So I'm sure this will come up
I,
more than once today.
I'm sure.
Yes, yes. So, Robin, when you think of or when you hear the word courage, what does it mean to you?
You know, often I think it's a misconception about courage. But my opinion, courage doesn't mean absence of fear.
Mhm.
To me, courage means feel the fear and do it anyway. I mean, there are some types of fear, of course,
Mhm.
that will protect us and we're not supposed to
Sure.
do. For example, let's take a very simple one. As a child, the stove is hot. Uh, yeah,
Mhm.
be afraid, don't touch it, right?
Right.
But in other areas of life where we might be afraid to do something, don't I have learned not to wait until the fear is gone
Mm.
because it may not be gone.
Mhm.
I have learned to go ahead and do it anyway
Yeah.
with the fear. Go with my knees knocking is the way I
Mm.
say it.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
say that because I remember one of my first experiences doing public speaking in front of a group. I mean, there was some experience from childhood in the church and all that, but as an adult and doing a technical presentation or a speech, as I stood up, I actually think my knees were really knocking together out of the fear. I was so nervous. My mouth was dry. My knees felt like they were knocking. I don't know if they were or not, but I did it anyway. And so that's an example of courage. Do it. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yes. I've heard this more than once, but I've heard people say, teachers, other speakers, where they say fear is just excitement without breath. I've
Mm,
heard that. That's real. It's like if you can just breathe into it, it's not ever totally going to go away, but if you can breathe into it, unless it is really that like life threatening, as you said, touching a stove, running out into the middle of the street, your chances are you're not going to die from it. You're not going to die from doing something that feels really scary because that's a cue that A, it's important to you, and two, it's something that you really should pursue, that you're being called to pursue.
yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, in all the zigzagging, and even as you finally decided to get on the path that you're on and pursue your PhD, where have you had to give yourself permission, and how has that permission brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, there's so many answers to that as you talk, referring to the zigzag, like which one, right?
Mm,
But since we are talking about this, I just happened to mention going back to grad school for the PhD. So since we're on that theme, I'll stay there.
mhm.
And because I mentioned Connecticut, I'll stay there too. But
Excellent.
I was one who, when I grew up in Connecticut, I loved it. And I thought I would never leave. Like,
Mm,
this is my home, all the people I love there. That family still, even though they all live separate now, but they still are very close. It's a close-knit family.
mm,
So I thought I would stay there forever. But when I felt compelled and called to go to grad school, it meant leaving Connecticut
mm,
and leaving that family.
mm,
And so that was a time where the courage had to be bigger than what I was leaving.
mm, mhm. And that seems to have paid off well for you, would you say?
It has. And, also what happens is we kind of think about externally, but
Yeah.
also internally.
Mhm.
One of my greatest values is success for me is to have inner peace most of the time.
Mm,
And
mhm,
so I have that because I
mhm,
follow the inner callings and promptings
mhm,
of my heart, of
mhm,
my soul, of my
mhm,
spirit,
mhm.
even with my knees knocking.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. Well, and so on that topic of the knees knocking and knowing that fear doesn't go away, are there any fears that are popping up for you right now in anything that you're working on or are about to work on?
I could say every day. Fear comes every day. I think it's a part of life, right? It's
Mm,
part of
mhm,
life. Let
mhm,
me back up from a more recent one, and then maybe it'll come to mind for one that's today, because I do believe they kind of come up all the time. But as you mentioned, I have a podcast. I host a podcast, Leadership Purpose with Dr.
mhm,
Robin. The first few episodes that I did, I kind of did some interviews and then I did some solo episodes. But whenever I sat down to do a solo episode, once again, that fear, to the extent that it was back in that, early time of doing public speaking, came back. I don't know why. I just, and people were saying to me, why? I'm like, I don't know. But it was
mhm.
there and it was real. So every time
Yeah.
I sat down to do a solo episode, the fear rose up. And,
Mhm,
it's not to the same extent, but occasionally it still does. So it's every
mhm.
day. It's
Yeah.
almost every day.
And because it comes up every day, it's this muscle that you end up working, right? You build it up because, there are things that we encounter in our lives, in our work, in our relationships that are kind of designed to pull us down, right? And so when you're working that muscle of fear and when you are actively and intentionally building that courage, you are able to move through those things a little bit more easily. But again, the fear doesn't go away because it's ever present.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I do think though, sometimes maybe we wear the fear down
sure.
and its power and its control, at least in that example that
Mhm.
I just gave about those
Mhm.
recording those solo episodes. Eventually I was like, okay, I don't even have time to deal with that fear. I just have to do it, right? So I'm kind of
Right.
wearing it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
In
Well,
other words, I don't give it the power that I once did.
exactly, exactly. And I'm guessing this comes up in coaching for you, when you're working with clients, that the fear has messages for us. And so it's shifting the relationship with the fear as opposed to it being like this thing that is that's blocking your path. And I remember a coach that was one of the coaches that trained me. He would say, what's in the way is the way. And so what's in the way is usually fear and doubt and the inner critic and all those things. But it's, as you said, it's making what's on the other side of the fear more important than the fear itself.
Yes, yes. And so the idea of, like we were talking about earlier, just courage, stepping up in the
Mhm,
courage and
mhm,
going ahead and moving forward anyway,
mhm,
in the midst of the
mhm.
fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about some of the strategies that you use to to overcome those fears, but I'm curious, what other tools do you use to manage your fears, to overcome them, to move beyond them? What else are you leaning on?
Well, I have, this term self-care is kind of overused and misunderstood in lots of ways, or understood in various ways, right? Some
Mhm,
people think,
mhm.
oh, bubble bath self-care, which nothing wrong with the bubble bath. It means that and lots of other things.
Sure.
So I just say that to say I'm using it more broadly.
Mhm.
I have a lifestyle of self-care. So
Mm.
when the fear comes, I'm somewhat fortified
Mm.
because I have these tools. I don't wait until the fear hits me in the moment. I'm already
Yeah.
building the muscle to help me move past and move forward with the fear. And so a couple of those tools are, for example, meditation. My life changed once I started meditating.
Mm.
And it's not for everybody. For example, my sister and I are very close. We're like best friends, and we have very different personalities. And the idea of being quiet or being still just makes her crazy. She can't understand. It just makes no sense. I don't think her mind can even like compute what that means, right? So it's not for everyone. And I don't say it's for everyone, but for people who are able to be quiet and to be still, like me, meditation is a
Mm,
valuable tool. It has changed my
mhm,
life. And just
mhm.
spending, and not even a long time for me, a few minutes, whatever. But for me on a daily basis, it strengthens me. So the moments the fear comes, I'm ready. I think
Mhm,
that's the number one tool that helps me.
mhm.
But
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to just mention this overall about self-care and the other things that we take for granted. I just want to mention those two more. The meditation is one, and
Mhm,
just kind of taking care of my body physically,
mm,
what I eat, what
mhm,
I drink,
mhm,
the rest that I give it,
mm.
and recreation. There's a difference between rest and recreation. I make that distinction. So I do those things to kind of keep me going. So when the time comes, I have some muscle built up.
Yeah. You're doing what James Brown says, stay ready so you don't have to get ready, right?
Stay ready. Yes, yes,
Yes.
I stay
Mhm.
ready.
Yes, I love that. I love that. So, in that same vein, where are there places where you are, in the moment? Like, for instance, you're working on your book, right? And like when I think of that, or, when you talked about doing your solo episode, yes, that like the thought of doing that, even though I've done it, it's like, ooh, oh no. So when there's something that is outside of your comfort zone that you're needing to get to, what permission do you have to give yourself, or what decision do you have to make within yourself to go outside of that?
My permission slip is my purpose.
Ooh.
The purpose is always bigger than the fear. And I know everything I do, including what I just mentioned about my self-care and all that, it's somewhat related to the purpose. My whole purpose of being here and doing the work I do. And
Mm-hmm.
so that when I tell myself, I do a lot of self-talk. I tell myself, why am I doing this? And what is it related to? What's the bigger vision? What's the bigger purpose? That gives me permission to be me. Because it's really not about the doing, it's not about the work. It's really about expressing who I am. For me,
Yeah.
that's what purpose is. You're expressing who you are. And if I don't express myself, then that's a consequence for me. So
Mm.
permission is the purpose. It's not in the situation. Purpose.
Ooh, so what you just said there, that if you are not expressing your purpose, that's a consequence for you. What is that consequence?
It looks like fatigue, even though I've already gotten good night's sleeps, just doing all the things, but I'm tired. I feel out of sorts, what I call out of sorts. It's just things don't feel right.
Mm,
They're off,
mm,
right?
mhm,
Just not right. And then I think about what I've done in the past few days or the past week. And if it's not in alignment with those things that are really who I am, it just throws me out of balance.
mm,
And I yearn for balance. I like to have balance in my
mhm,
life. I don't want to
mhm.
be, I used to joke with a friend and say, I'm on tilt today. I'm on tilt. It's like I can't think right. Things aren't going right. I'm dropping things. I'm tripping. It's just like, trying to off balance. I'm tilting. So I like
Mm,
to be in balance.
I love that. I'm on tilt today. I'm gonna start using that. I'll credit you. My friend Robin says, I'm on tilt today. Oh, that's so good. That is rich. That is so rich. So, inevitably, there is someone who is listening or watching who has that dream or that idea or that vision that keeps coming to them, but they're making fear a little too important, a little too big. What is one piece of advice that you want to give to that person who's listening today?
I say to them, is there one little, small, teeny weeny weeny piece of it that you can do?
Yes.
Could you just not think about the big thing? Don't think about all the many steps. Is there one little thing that you could do that's possible? And if the
Mm,
answer is yes, there's one thing I can do, I would say just do that. Don't worry about the rest of it. Just take that one little step toward this thing that's scaring you. Even if
yes.
it just means talking to someone, making a call. One small step, it opens up. It
Yes.
opens up the way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That would be my advice.
Yes.
Do the small.
Yes. Yes. Do the small thing. And I'm so glad that you went so far as to say, like, don't take the big thing, right? Like, don't take the big vision or the big idea or the big goal. Break it down and do, as you said, that teeny weeny one little thing that gets you closer to that without you having to, do the whole kit and caboodle.
Yes, yes.
Mm,
And here's an example. I had a friend who was writing a book and she was just maybe midway through and just kind of fed up, frustrated.
mhm,
It's like, I don't have anything. I don't, it's
mm.
just nothing left. I can't do this, right? So I asked her, I said, well, she says, I just can't write. I'm like, well, you don't have to write the book today. Can you write a page? No, I can't. I can't even write a page. Can you write a paragraph? No, I don't think I could even write a paragraph. Can you at least write a sentence? Maybe. Maybe I can get a sentence. I was like, try to get just one sentence done today. And her work on that sentence led to more sentences. So
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
pick the little thing. Sometimes our brain, because if you're thinking the whole book and what happens after that, it just jams up everything else. No
Yeah.
wonder in this case, for example, you can't write, you can't flow, you
Mhm,
can't be in the thing that you
mhm,
were wanting to do.
mhm. Yes. Okay, everyone. One little step,
One little,
one teeny weeny step.
it's important. That's
It
how it
is.
happens. One little step at a
Is.
time, a million little steps.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. And it's like, and those little steps add up to big steps, big moves later, just because you can't see them happening and it doesn't feel like it's happening, but every little step adds up to that big thing. And then you look back and then it's like, oh, I did all that.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. It's almost
I'm gonna
like,
keep
who,
going.
it's like, who did that? You
Right.
don't even realize you did it.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, well, Robin, as always, this has been such an enlightening and enjoyable conversation. I love our chats so
I
much.
do too. I do too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining today. And I want you to tell everyone, where can they learn more about you or get in contact with you?
Okay, I just want to say thank you, Kia. This is a delight. I am honored to be a part of the work you're doing because I know you're making real transformation in people's lives. And
Thank
so for
you.
me to be here and to share just a moment and just a little bit of it as we were talking means a lot to me. So thank you. And
Thank
so
you.
for everybody who's listening, if you want to hear more from me, I would say check out my podcast, Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin, or you can find me at Robin L. Owens, PhD, on social media, Robin L. Owens, PhD, or my website, robinlowens.com, robinlowens.com.
Excellent. And we will include all of Robin's information in the show notes if you didn't catch it. Robin, again, thank you so much. I love you, and I'm so glad that you were able to join today and be a part of this conversation.
Thank you, Kia. I love you too.
All
Bye
right.
bye.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Talk to you again on the next episode.